All of us on mute, right?
Welcome back to Context. We are in our second roundtable basketball discussion, this time with a group of high school coaches. We are joined today by Ken Manfredi, head basketball coach at Franklin High School in Elk Grove, Eddie Wilson, head basketball coach and athletic director at Fairfield High School, Rob Hanmer, who is the head basketball coach and golf coach at Rancho Mirage High School, Keith Larsen, who is the head basketball coach at Menlo School, and Terrence Harris, who is the head basketball coach at Mission Prep in San Luis Obispo. Really excited to have these guys with us, and we are going to dive right in. And the first thing we are going to cover is dealing with the last, let's call it 18 months of our lives, trying to coach and maintain program in a global pandemic. And what I'm really curious about is how has the uniqueness of this time period, and we can call it the 2021 school year, even though it went into the year before that, and it's probably going to follow us into this year as well. But how has it changed you as a coach? And maybe it's something you've implemented, maybe it's something you've learned, but with the change that you can identify, how are you working to continue to integrate those changes as you move forward so that you can carry those with you into your programs? And let's start with Coach Hanmer.
I think the biggest thing about the COVID era is just learning how to be more flexible. Honestly, I'm one of those guys that could tell you the last weekend in June, we're going to have a tournament, even though it's August. And I was one of those guys that had the 12-month calendar for all of the programs that I coach. And with COVID, I can't believe how many schedules have been upended, ruined, destroyed, canceled. Even as we're putting together our schedules for fall golf, out here, the golf courses have changed their close times. So we went from having a golf course, no issues whatsoever, to now I've had 8 no's, 2 maybes. One guy wants to charge us, and we're a week away from practice starting, and we still don't have a place for our practices or matches on a consistent basis between now and October. Putting together the Christmas tournament that we run, I've got 50 schools on the list already, and they all want contracts. But at the same time, is it really worth putting all that time and effort into sending out contracts if COVID's going to blow up Christmas tournament number 2? So it's just, to me, our kids have had to be flexible walking in the gym. We had a situation, obviously, where masks have come and gone. Now it looks like they're coming back again. I'm very organized in what we do, and I just think this era in my life has caused me to be a lot more flexible with kids coming and going. We've had a couple kids get sick, so obviously they're missing practices, and you have to be a lot more compassionate about everything that's going on with our world. And within our gym, we've just had to realize that it might not be a perfect situation, but it's been really, really enjoyable getting back in the facility and working with kids. Coaches were talking about camps prior to starting the recording, and the opportunity to go to a camp is something that we all look forward to going to, and certainly looking forward to it. Ken, what's your opinion? What's the biggest thing that you've had to adjust to in the COVID era?
Well, Coach, I think the interesting thing about this call is that we probably all have a lot of shared experiences. So when you talk about flexibility, I think that hits home to all of us, just being more flexible. But, some of the uniqueness of of our COVID experience that I've noticed changes in me is I'm just trying to have a greater attitude of gratitude and just really be thankful for what I do have. And obviously that's on the court, but it's even off the court. And to just, I think we've all had things taken from us, but yet we're adults that have life experience to fall back on. So the level of empathy that I have for my students and athletes is, to use this time to really focus on the moment, like that workout and that particular game or that particular COVID testing with my teammates. And kind of follow the Pat Riley saying of, just keep the main thing, which for me is how do I best serve my athletes? And as a coach, as a teacher, and as someone who can help provide some leadership and hopefully an ear or a shoulder or an opportunity to get a workout in. So those are things that I've noticed about COVID and what it's done for me, and things I don't want to forget about as we eventually exit COVID, which is just really be grateful of the opportunity that we have as coaches to be around young people, to try to stay in the moment and not always think about the next thing or the next event. And then just continually remind myself, how can I best serve my athletes, whether it's their mental health, whether it's, being a better listener, or whether it's being a coach that is thinking things through their eyes and their ears rather than just my eyes and my ears. So, Coach Wilson, what do you think? I know you got some good things to probably share on this experience as well.
Well, first off, I'd say that, I echo the thoughts of of Coach Hanmer and Coach Manfredi, because I think all of us are similar in that sense, that schedules and regiment and those types of rituals, I guess, are so important to us. And the uniqueness of the past season taught us that we needed to be much more flexible, much more patient, much more empathetic. So I agree with those. I had two immediate thoughts. First off, from an X and O standpoint, we'd always like to have a lot of stuff at our disposal, schemes offensively and, junk defenses. And we were going to guard pick and rolls 4 different ways, depending on where you were. And, the uniqueness of this season, we really had to minimize our stuff. And, what we found is we became more effective at some of the things that we were doing because we weren't doing so many things. So that's something we've talked about as a staff moving forward, trying to minimize our playbook with regards to, on the offensive end, and then defensively, just kind of settling in on maybe 2 or 3 important things for us. I think our kids appreciated that. And, what I found, and as I went into the season, we had said we were going to kind of treat this like a summer league this past season, and we're just going to go play. Happened. And I was really nervous about that because I like to control the games with scheme, and we really had a good time. And I felt like our kids, there was never a point where I was going, man, I really wish I had that, that side OB right now, because it wasn't really that important, I don't think. The other thing that, and just kind of to echo what Coach Manfredi said, was, really valuing the now. Always been a guy that's looked forward to the next game, the next season, and just really kind of focusing on the present, and just trying to be the best guy that I could be for my group at that particular time. And I like what again, what Coach Manfredi, kind of alluded to, being of service and looking at kids and seeing what they needed at that particular time, and trying to provide that. And basketball, a lot of times coaches complicate and make it more difficult maybe than kids want it to be, and it becomes task oriented a lot of times. And I think during this time, getting out of their house and just having fun with their friends was so important to them, and it became important to me too. So, Coach Harris, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Thanks, Coach. My first thought is, man, I'm glad I wasn't alone in all these thoughts and feelings and adjustments that we made on the season, because I couldn't agree with you guys more. A lot of the mentality was the same. I want maybe come at this from a different angle as an off-campus coach. I think one of the things that I learned, not learned, but just decided to keep with us is being more resourceful and utilizing the tools that we have available to us. Sometimes it's hard, to get everything in, get from one place to the next, timing being an off-campus coach. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, like we're gonna leave the Zoom room as a part of what we do. And it may be that, hey, I've got a window during the middle of the day where the guys can get in the classroom together, and I can take a lunch break from at work, and I can have my film session during the middle of the day. And then when we show up to practice, we're a little bit more efficient. We don't have to have that dead time right before practice. Guys can get home a little bit sooner. So there's just been a couple of things like that where the necessity of the moment has turned into, wow, I can be a little bit more efficient, effective, and resourceful as we move on. So I guess my advice would be, think about the things that really worked out well, even in a moment of crisis and chaos, and figure out ways that you can implement those into the type of program that you want to have. Coach Larsen, what did you learn? What do you got for us? Uh-oh, Coach. Something that we're not going to get away from yet. You're on mute.
Coach, you got to come off mute. There we go.
So I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer, but nothing that I can think of was, I mean, I know it's hard for you guys to believe I'm not on Twitter. I'm not a TikTok guy. I like to call my kids. I like to talk to my kids. And we had so many different things going on where we were outside in these little pods, lifting weights. And I only had 2 seniors, and, they wouldn't show up. And then we don't have any outdoor courts at Menlo because we're in Atherton. So we had to talk the tennis coach into maybe letting us have a couple tennis courts. So we put these outdoor courts in, and the first day a kid broke his elbow because he kind of hit the bottom standard. And then our league decided that we still wanted to play double round robin. And there was just absolutely no practice time. So one day I just turned my hat around backwards, and I wore a sweatshirt with my hood over. And I just thought it was an AAU type of a situation where I just rolled the ball out and said, guys, obviously you know who I am. This is not what we do, but I'm not quite sure what I can give you. What can you give me? What do we want to do? All I want to do is play. And from the administration to the parents, Coach Larsen, we know how you are. Just let the kids have fun. Well, I looked at my schedule. I had Midi, SI, Palo Alto, Half Moon Bay. And I said, okay, here's the deal. My job is to challenge and prepare your children for upcoming events in their life that are going to be challenging. And we can't do it. And even though I thought physically we were in a normal situation, we could prepare these kids. They're not self-starters. And it's important to realize and to learn that what you do is really important. And we are that artist that draws this canvas, and then we present it. And when you don't have time to prepare, when you have more games and practices, the product that you bring out is not exactly what we're willing to be proud of. And I think this was a learning situation for me. I am a big one-on-one guy. We had no locker room. We had no film study. The athletic director put two big chalkboards on either the visiting coach and the head coach. That was our locker room. So in practice, I felt like all I was doing is going around and saying, "Hey, how are you doing, Justin? How are you doing? Rob?" And then all of a sudden, practice was over. You're going to have an hour and a half. So what I learned from this last season, these last 3 months, is how important the time we put in with preparation, film, connecting with these kids. I love bus rides. I go through the bus and just sit down with kids and say, "How you doing? How's school going?" Because I know all of us have, a pretty rigorous academic schedule, but Menlo is almost overboard what these kids have to deal with academically, and all those things were gone. So I'm just glad, and hopefully things are going to happen or start over anew, and we get back to normal. But like I said, I can't think of any positive situation that happened this year other than, going from nothing to something, and then looking at my calendar and it's June 15th and I'm in the semifinals of a CCS game and thinking, what has happened to my life?
Love it. All great contributions, things that came up: flexibility, gratitude, how to simplify, how to maximize resources, the importance of having structure and preparation time, and the value of off-court time with our students that we don't always get. So, I think Coach Harris's point about crisis, we never want to let a good crisis go unused. And so making sure we take advantage of that while keeping the student athlete, in this case, at the center of the equation, which oftentimes I think we forget about. It made me wonder, and I'll throw this one out there more as a topic than a question. And Eddie, we're going to start with you, since your idea in one of these first episodes is that we should just get on here and tell stories. And I said, well, hey, we don't need to be getting fired here. So, but I'm curious, if we think about what happens off the court, one not basketball related, generally after our athletes' careers are over. I wonder if you could offer a story about one of your most impactful moments that you had as a coach that was relayed back to you, maybe from an athlete, in regards to the impact that we have. Because to Coach Larsen's point, if we don't get the time we normally get, how does that change the influence and impact that we have? And I would love to know, as you think about this and the years that you've all put in, right? Is there a story that jumps out that reminds you, when we're in crisis, why we still do what we do?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of one that would best answer what you're getting at. I think that just generally speaking, I'm pretty close with most of my players who are now adults and workers and fathers and everything else, husbands, and they don't talk about the third quarter of the Franklin of Elk Grove game over at Bella Vista. Oftentimes it is the moments outside of the actual lines of the court that are most influential. I don't know that I have a great specific story, but I think those are the moments that I've learned to cherish. I think one of the things that we had talked about in the pod, the episode that we had, Justin, was ways that we've grown as coaches, and I think early in my career it was I had a job and the player had a job, and we needed everybody to do their best, and then hopefully the results were positive. But but now I think there's much more moments of appreciation for the relationship component. So I think what you're getting at is, um, how we best prepared, these kids for their adult lives, and the type of mark that we leave. And I coach at a school where I've got a tough group of kids that are, um, they're a lot of them are striving for structure, and we provide that. And so, that's something that they always, for the most part, express appreciation for. And I mean, I've got guys that are doing wonderful things, and there's no better feeling than, when you get that random text of appreciation from a kid. And um, I'm searching for that story, but I think the one that's coming up that I'm not sure that is the best one to respond to this, but we were playing in NorCal semis on the road, and we had a kid who was a little bit frustrated, and he had voiced that frustration to a coach in a disrespectful manner. And I mean, he was a D1 scholarship kid, and we sat him for the remainder of the game. And it's one that as I reflect on, I wish maybe we'd have handled it a little bit differently. But there he was, his senior year at a university, telling the school newspaper that was the most important moment of his life, because he learned that he wasn't above everybody else, and that he at all times needed to respect the people that he's supposed to respect, and he had to control his emotions, and yada yada yada. And he and I have spoke about that many times, because I have a lot of remorse for the way that it handled. I wish I would have handled it a little bit differently. And he's, he wouldn't want me to handle it any other way. So again, that was a kind of a on the court moment that we were trying to make a point to keep our program intact. And it ended up being something that was really, really important to him, and influenced him even now in his adult life. So I'm stretching a little bit, but I'm wondering if that's what you're getting at. So hopefully Coach Harris can help me out there, and he's got a better story, I imagine.
Well, see, I had the fortune of time that you didn't have, so I was thinking as you were telling your story, Coach, and a number of things came to mind. But I'll actually tell you, over this stretch, over this COVID stretch, I actually heard from several young men, and some of these situations happened this year, some of them were from previous years, and just learning, hearing, and understanding the impact of some things was pretty cool. As guys were struggling through things this year, to hear how some of the past has influenced them. And one that stands out to me is one of our young men. Basically, he and a couple buddies just launched a company over this last year. It's called the Idea Factory, and basically his thing is we make ideas happen. He's this kid is from a family that's done very well, successful businesses and whatnot, but he always struggled with his own emotions and his own acceptance and those type of things. And he played on a couple of the better teams that I've coached, and he's one of the better athletes, quite frankly, that I've coached. And as a coach, I always look back and think, man, what should I have done different with him? How could I have handled so many of these situations different with him? There are times where I just go pick him up and we go for a drive to talk. Times where I was tough on him, made him cry, like all kinds of things that took place that I was just trying to find the right buttons to push. And at many times I felt like I failed. I felt like I failed him. I felt like I failed his family. I felt like I failed the team, not getting him to what I knew he could be as a basketball player. But to have him come in our gym when it was finally open this year and film a video to launch his new deal called the Idea Factory, and the opening is like this montage of just folks that have impacted and tell me your why. And he's telling stories about what he's doing now. For Christmas, he just had a whole bunch of stuff and went around to poor neighborhoods and like delivered flat screen TVs to families and toys to little kids because he wanted to see that joy in them. But to hear him relate that back to Coach, you have no idea how much what you did for me helped me get to this point, and I didn't have any idea. Again, I look back and I thought, man, I wish I would have, could have. But we nurtured him through a time the best we could, just like any coach does, and just like parents do for their kids. We nurtured him through a time the best we knew how. And I think we talked about this, Justin, on the podcast. Ask me how good my team was, and I'll tell you 10, 15, 20 years from now. Well, successful seasons, right? Not because we won a lot of games, but because the experience that young man had, he's been able to turn it into some really positive things in his life, even though he struggled through some things. And it's not because of one thing I said or one thing I did, but as coaches, as teachers, as educators, keep the main thing the main thing. And our main thing is to help raise these kids. It's to help get them to the next step in their lives. And that goes far beyond any win or loss. I saw something, just to wrap it up, sorry, I saw something on Twitter the other day. I'm trying to remember the coach because I like to give people credit, and I can't, but it was parents, you're not raising athletes, you're raising people, so raise them to be good kids, to work hard, have good work ethic. And sometimes we get lost in the wins and losses and execution, but remember the root of what we're doing, and that's to raise good young men, help raise good young men, and the rest should take care of itself. Coach Larsen.
Okay, I think my mute is off. My first high school head coaching job was at Woodside High School, and about 60% of our students were from East Palo Alto, because why wouldn't you close down Ravenswood and Coverly when these kids couldn't travel to other schools? But those are the two schools you're going to close down. So all these poor kids have to travel to Woodside or Menlo Atherton or Carmont or Sequoia. So most of the kids that I had to get a 6:30 bus to get to 8 o'clock class. And every one of my kids that either on my volleyball team or my basketball team or my golf team, the golf and volleyball were a little different, but my basketball team was predominantly kids from East Palo Alto. And everything that I could do to help them find a junior college or a college or a job, I was totally involved with, even more than the basketball. So I hope I helped, or I tried to help all of them. And, we got through this, and I'm still in, contact with them. Remember, this is 1991 was my last year at Woodside before I went to Stanford. And now those 20 years at college, and now I'm at Menlo School, where most of the kids want nothing to do with me outside of basketball. So how do I bridge that gap? They've got ACT, SAT tutors. They've got, parents that have been to the Ivy Leagues or great schools. And what they want from me is pretty much playing time. They want this to be an adventure and this to be something special. And I'm the guy that wants to say, so what do you want to do the next 10 years? Or where do you see yourself the next 5 years? And they look at me like, wait a minute, that's not your job. Your job is to make my basketball experience something that is like my AC, my math or my English or whatever. And so it's really hard to connect with my Menlo kids the way I did with my Woodside kids. So what I have to do is try to find that common ground where, what can I do for you when you get to your dream college? And the pressure that they have when they look at mom and dad and maybe older brothers and sisters that are in Ivy Leagues or at Stanford or whatnot is so different than I'm used to where I grew up as the oldest of a very large Irish Italian family, to where mom and dad never went to college, to where I'm at Menlo, where all these kids pretty much have their life set up for them, and the pressure that they have to follow big brother, big sister, or mom and dad. So it's what I try to do is find that common ground to where I can share some of the life experiences on, there's a 300 and something Division I schools out there, and you're probably not going to be a Division I basketball player. But what can I do to share my stories of my college coaching career and when I went to school that can help you make that right choice? And remember, mom and dad and big brother and big sister have already gone to college. Why don't you pick a place that's unique to you, that it fits all the things that you want out of a college? So as I grow older in this profession and realize that the basketball part is still something I enjoy, but you can go from one high school to another. They're literally a mile and a half away and have a completely different, group of kids that you need to really focus on how to help them have another opinion. And I found out that over the last 5 or 6 years, the pressure that these kids at Menlo have to live up to what their parents or their big brother or big sister is just as important as how am I going to beat, Carmel or, Half Moon Bay or Sacred Heart Prep. So those are my challenges. Who am I passing this on to? Coach Manfredi?
Coach Hanmer.
Coach Hanmer.
Gotta have that list in front of you for the rotation. All right. I think going into year 29, I've gotten a lot better in regards to staying in touch with kids. I do think social media has really, really helped in regards to being aware of what your alumni kids are doing or how they're doing, both positively and negatively. So I love Facebook memories, our trip to Pebble Beach, our trip to Hawaii, our trip here, our trip there. I mean, we have kids that live in the desert and they've never seen the Pacific Ocean. So for us to go to Santa Monica team camp and them to go swimming in the Pacific Ocean, when those memories come up, I'm really good at snapshotting those pictures and sending them to the kids and say, hey, I miss you. We had a great trip. How you doing? How's your kids doing? And I've got quite a few alumni now. Some of them are getting close to 50. And to watch them go through the stages of life has been really, really cool. A couple or 2 years ago, I had my first kid that played for me. His kid played all 4 years for me and graduated. So senior night of a kid that you coached, his kid, that's pretty emotional. And for both of them to take a picture and give you a big hug and say thanks, you've gotten the generations. Probably the best story I have in regards to me, at 93, I coached a kid and he led the county in scoring. Kind of a broken home. Dad finally came to basketball games when he read about his son being a great player in the Desert Sun paper. So he finally started coming to games, had a great career, went in the Navy. And 2 years later, he found himself in a situation where he accidentally killed a guy. And he got sentenced to 36 years to life. And I actually had to fly up and be a character witness for him on the positive side. And I thought I did a pretty good job on that side. And then the defense attorney just killed me with, boxing out. Has he ever hit somebody? Or, is he physical? And I've always felt horrible about not being the perfect witness because the defense attorney just made him seem like he was a rough and tumble basketball player. And this is how he could have killed the guy. And so we obviously corresponded while he was in jail, and he was in one of the big boy prisons for 18 years. And when he got out, he actually drove from LA out to the desert, and we went and had a meal, and he actually talked to my team for about an hour, talking about life's choices can really, really make or break your life. And it was obviously emotional, and it was really good. And he's come to a couple games, and he's doing great. He's got a wife, a kid. He moved to Colorado. He's got a great job doing solar panels. So to know, I mean, we've had Division I kids, but to have that kid that ended up in the wrong place, wrong time, and survived 18 years in the penitentiary, to come out on the other side and look you up, that was obviously, I realized the impact that you could have on a young person's life. And Coach Manfredi, your turn.
Man, that's a phenomenal story, Coach. And I not only are the listeners going to appreciate that, but I'm just in awe of what that must have felt like for you as a character witness, and then to have his real character come through at the end or after his time. Wow. Well, you know, I've been listening to all the amazing relationship connections that each of you have, and what kind of hit my brain was some of the following. I'll never forget, like, the first wedding I was invited to as a coach. That was so, like, amazing. Like, it was just so validating of so many. He's such a special kid. He plays in the NFL right now. It's unbelievable. Just to see his life, like, you know, move forward in such a positive direction. And just to be there at a small wedding, I felt so honored to be in that presence. I'll never forget that moment, and I'll cherish that, you know, forever. I do remember a phone call from a former player as well on his decision to serve the U.S. Armed Forces. And he told me how important he reflected, and he said, you know, you always told us the importance of being on a team, and being on a team that matters, and serve people. And he just, you know, he really related it back to that. And I just, that was a phone call I'll never forget. And again, just so it's just out of body experience when you have those kind of, you know, moments with your players. For him to be able to conceptualize that and then to communicate that. And that was a wonderful moment that I'll never forget. You know, a call and I've had, probably like all of you, I've had the very fortunate experience of having former players want to get into teaching and coaching, and then to be on your bench with you. It's just an amazing experience. And just to be so proud to step back, give them a drill, give them responsibilities within your program, and to hear them say it better than you've ever said it is just, you know, mind-boggling as a coach. And I've had that experience several times, and I'm sure you guys have. And it's just such a moment of joy for a coach. Another call I remember, you know, with a player like, Coach, you had such a good relationship with your wife and your family. How do I know if she's the right one? And just that vulnerability of a young man who's in his mid-20s to have that conversation and to be so open to hear, like, what are your thoughts? And of course, you know, it's not as if I had, you know, the magic answer, but for players to come back to you and ask you those important questions it's why we do what we do. On the flip side, the calls that we've all had when there's like a death in the family, those are calls you'll never forget, you know? And so I think of the couple that I've had with that. And I know you guys can reflect on that. It's just, those emotions never leave you, you know? But I will say, I went through that in college as a player, or right after college as a player. Justin, you may recall. And one of the first calls I got was Coach Williams from UC Davis. So it meant the world to me. And it was so refreshing. to just know that like he cared more about me than a basketball player and a student. I'll never forget that moment. And he's really set the way for me to try to do that right and be there for people that go through those times, those terrible times. Last one, I don't mean to get emotional, but you know, we work in an emotional business, guys. We work with people, you know, and young people. I ran into a guy. I was back at UC Davis having a picnic with my family at one of my favorite places on campus, Puda Creek, right behind Mirage Hall, where we used to all pay our tuition because none of us were on scholarship. And a player, you don't see a lot of people. It was during COVID too, so there wasn't a lot of, you know, it was pretty remote at the time. There wasn't a lot of people around, and I met eye to eye with a guy that I walked by, and wow, he looks familiar. And then we took a double take. It was a kid my first year at Franklin 7 years ago. And it was a very challenging first year. And he was a talented player that quit within 2 weeks. And he came up and apologized, and just his voice and I kind of in turn apologized back to him because we just didn't have that relationship yet. And we hadn't grown the seeds to be able to, and the roots, if you will, to be able to survive the experience that he was going through. And so I don't feel like I was able to serve him because of our limited time together. And so I apologized to him because he told me the real reason he quit. And I wish I had earned that trust. But sometimes that takes time, and we all know that. So those are some experiences, some highs and lows. And I'm just so thankful that we work in a business that allows us to sometimes get those important opportunities.
Love that, all of you. Thanks for sharing those intensely personal stories. On Ken's note there, the first wedding, right? Or when I'm getting texted pictures of sonograms from my former players and how excited they are. Those things are always memorable and cherished. And so I wonder if we can acknowledge, for the most part, that basketball is a vehicle to teach leadership, followership, how to be part of something bigger than yourself, and that the lessons that we impart on these athletes, even for the small percentage, 3% mathematically that will matriculate to collegiate athletics, but in what way do you intentionally work on your off-court curriculum, right? So to Ken's point, in year one, I hadn't earned that trust, right? The cliche is, it doesn't matter how much you know until they know how much you care, right? So since people are tuning in to glean some information that potentially they can steal and use, are there things that you do intentionally with your non-basketball curriculum that is going to set these young men, in your case, you all coach men. I think, Rob, you might coach the women's golf team too. I'm not sure, but young men and women who are going to need this information later in life. And all of you mentioned somebody reached back out and said, this was transformational for me. But if you could offer, maybe in a shortened version, but the best thing that I do with my team that is not related to basketball that I've gotten feedback on that has been transformational, what would that be? And let's start with, let's go with Ken this time. Coach Manfredi, we'll let you get this thing rolling.
This is a great question. I can't wait because I'm going to learn from all the coaches on the call. The best thing is something that I'm re-implementing that I have not done over the last 6 years since I am now at Franklin High School. And it's not that I didn't need to do this. I just kind of jumped a different direction and picked a few new pillars to try to conquer. But we have a character program, or I've had a character program in most of the places that I've coached at. And our pillars in our program are attitude, effort, and skill. And so everything flows from that and everything ties back to that. And I want our teaching to be consistent with those foundations, if you will. And so we have Saturday morning breakfasts with our program. And we get 2, if not 3, usually 3 teams together. We break bread together and have a small meal together. This is usually after a light practice. And we picked a component within attitude, a component within effort, or a component within skill. And we just try to impart life experiences, life lessons, and give the kids time to, break bread together, eat together, laugh together. We fill their bellies with a little bit of stuff. And we have their ears for another half hour, and try to make it a memorable experience, whether it's a guest speaker, or whether it's an assistant coach, sharing some life stories that they know they knew they did not know anything about, that he or she has those experiences, and it's just awesome. It's powerful, and those make for some of the feedback from players. Those were some of the best practices, coach. Now I don't know if that means I'm not a good X and O coach, or if that just means that made a little bit of a difference. On top of that, we would do, pregame meals. Usually that was just with my varsity. And that would be, from, 3 to 4:30, 3 to 4, and giving them a chance to, 1, get some homework done, 2, listen to some music together, just, be light together, laugh together. Then we'd fill their bellies a little bit, not too much, and then we'd sneak in one more last little clip of, some film clips, some priorities for the game. So I didn't need to have a long pregame speech, and we'd get to the gym together on time, ready to support our JV program. And it just really reiterated to our players that we cared about them a lot more, as people, and where they're trying to get in life than, how many jump shots they hit, or, how many, assists they had that night. So I hope I answered that correctly. That jumps out at me. And COVID taught me I got to get back to that, because just being away from our kids and kids being away from one another, those times where they can connect and we can all speak a similar language, and learn from one another, I think are just something that I'm really looking forward to moving back towards. Sorry, I hit the mute button. How about this? I can't wait to learn. Coach Wilson, what's something that comes to your mind when, from Coach Climo's question, about something off the court with your off the court curriculum?
I was immediately thinking that I wish I had your cooking skills, Coach Manfredi, because it sounds like you're doing a whole lot of cooking, or your budget to utilize that Uber Eats like you're using it over there, man.
Hey,
so
I'll give you my shortcuts offline. Yeah.
I think, Climo, you were alluding to intentionality with regards to character stuff, and I think one of the things that we do, we do the thoughts of the day, that normally relates to some sort of adversity that the team had the day prior, the practice prior. We have the themes of the week where, we're getting ready to play, a real tough, aggressive team. So, we're talking about whatever it is that we need to do. I think the big thing for us, though, that is something that I put on all my coaches as well. I have a great staff, that really understands the big picture of high school athletics, but we are really intentional, with relating the things that the kids are going through on the basketball court to real life. And whether that's, in the middle of a practice or at the end of a game, we spend a lot of time trying to directly correlate the experiences that they're having on the court with experiences that they're going to have in their lives, be that, commitment, or like I said, suffering through adversities, whatever it is. One of the things that we do on our practice plan, I assign kids to coaches. So, I typically have 3 or 4 coaches in the gym with me, and they'll all have a group of 3 or 4 kids that they're responsible for that week. And then we put them on a rotation. And I don't know that the kids even know that we do this, and it's their assignment is to, the coach's assignment is to make sure that they reach out to the kid and have some sort of communications that have nothing to do with basketball. And it just might be like, hey, tell me what you learned in science today. Or it might be, hey, you know, how are things at home? Is there anything I can help you with? You know, so we're really intentional about trying to make those connections. And then I think what that does is it gives us it gives us some abilities to come at the kids maybe in ways that other coaches can't, because we've shown that we care about them as more than just players. So when we cross that line sometimes of maybe going a little bit too hard at a kid, they understand we're coming from a good place. And then the other thing is that we then have, you know, our post practices will be like, you know, hey, keep an eye on, you know, blah, blah, blah. He had mentioned that there's something going on at home. And so that alerts all of us, and we're able to make sure that we're sensitive to that, and then we can be empathetic, which was, you know, like I said, something that's been a change for me personally. Um, and you know, I think that beyond that, we, you know, we'll have sit downs where we'll talk about, you know, specific things. I think that, you know, current events obviously allow us to have lots of you know, in-depth conversations, and we've embraced that, and we've used that, and again, like it used to be like I'm not sacrificing practice time for anything, right? And we've grown up a little bit and understood that there's some more important things than how we're going to run our own against whatever it is you're doing offensively. So I again, a little bit generic, but there is a very deliberate, intentional act on the behalf of our staff. Like we're trying to make connections to the game to life, and going back to what we had talked about previously, things that our guys talk about, you know, after the fact. So, Coach Harris, you're up.
Yeah, thank you, man. My pen's running out of ink taking these good notes from you guys. One simple one that I'll speak to, and it's borrowed from Coach Joe Calero, former Cal Poly and Seattle U, amongst other places, head coach. We call them put-ups, and it's essentially affirmations. So like at the end of practice, you know, we just go around. We don't necessarily call on people, but guys just have a habit of, hey, anybody got put-ups? And the guys have a habit of recognizing something that they saw in someone else during that practice. It's good for a number of reasons, in my opinion. One, communication with this generation of youngsters isn't always so great face to face. You know, it's just not as natural maybe as it used to be. Giving compliments isn't always at the top of people's lists, right? But we want to recognize our teammates, our family members, our brothers for the things that they're doing, and also being on the receiving end and being able to accept that and be acknowledged. And you should see the smiles on guys' faces, and just like the little camaraderie that it brings at the end of a practice, with guys feeling good about getting called up, you know, for something well that they did. And I think Coach Manfredi mentioned attitude of gratitude earlier. It's a part of that, right? Just recognizing that it's about more than just me. Like, what can I recognize in the people around me that they're excelling at today or any other day. So put-ups is something that we enjoy every day, after practice, after games, no matter how tough. Always have put-ups. I'm gonna jump around and go ahead to my man, Coach Hanmer, and see what I can learn from you.
That's what I love about you, Coach Harris. You're smart enough to just go with the fly. Where'd he go? Actually, this has been really, really good, because each of the three coaches that went previously, all stuff that we do. Some of our greatest weekends are those mini team camps, just 4 teams. We'll do stations together, competing against each other. And then we'll do, each coach has a theme to talk about to all the different kids. And then we'll have pizza. And then the next morning we'd come back and do 20-minute games against everybody. And you can get a ton of work in Friday night, Saturday morning, and you're home by dinner on Saturday night, and the wife's happy with you. we're really intentional about assigning coaches, players, and we do rotate them. I had a class for the last 7 years that was lunchtime activities, which meant I opened up the gym and rolled out the basketballs so that anybody on our campus could come in at lunch and get into the air conditioning and have a cool place to eat. But more importantly, I had a whole bunch of basketball players in the gym during lunch. And I got the opportunity to have lunchtime meetings with them and talk about school, talk about life, talk about, their relationships with family, friends, girlfriends. So I'm a big person that thinks it's important to hit each kid as often as possible, one-on-one, small groups, and do that. We've done into the practice on the circle. We didn't call it put-ups, but it was same general idea. Absolutely love that. And that could definitely get emotional at times. I was actually at LMU's practice on Friday, and that's how they ended their practice. And it was intense, and you forget how intense that end of practice situation can be, both positively and negatively. So I actually like the put up idea better instead of I tend to critique too much at the end of practice. I think the biggest thing is having a plan with how you're going to get to the kids in your program. And I've obviously been at this a long time. I've never been the guy that's going to go to the family's house and have dinner and explain each player's role and playing time for the season, just because that seemed like an absolute ton of time. But I do try to, by hosting as many tournaments as we host, I will have the parents while they're in the gym in between games. When I'm not socializing with the other coaches, I will oftentimes find myself in a situation where, hey, Johnny, go grab your dad. We're going to talk real quick about things. And I think by running the tournaments, it's been a very good vehicle for getting parents on our side as far as the fact that we're willing to put a ton of time into the basketball program and their children, and having those moments in the hallways where we're talking about the things that their children are doing good and some things that they might need to improve upon. But I think if parents know you care and you're willing to put in time, they're going to be a lot more likely to be on your side. And then obviously when you get the parents on your side, you got a much better chance of your Johnnies and Joes figuring it out. So, Coach Larsen, are you ready to go? Got to push mute, buddy. You're still on mute.
So before I go, who am I passing it off to after I'm done?
I'm taking it back for the last question.
All right, good. All right, so non-basketball stuff. So I haven't been around the block, but I've built a couple blocks. So I want to share with you a couple things that I've done at different levels. So it started I was a 11-year volleyball coach, and I went to Stanford, and now all I'm doing is the 19th assistant at Stanford. But I love going to the gym and watching, the volleyball practices. So you guys are too young to remember socials where you just you got a group together and you got together. So I got the volleyball and the basketball team together, put everybody's name in a hat, and we played ping pong, and then we did karaoke. And it was just the best thing. And actually, two of my basketball players married volleyball players, and one actually married the trainer. And it was all because of these socials, these kind of fun things. So we carried that on. And in high school, what we did is we would pick the basketball and the girls basketball team or volleyball team. And we constantly were, changing exactly what we did. And what you found at the high school level, like at Woodside High School, is you found that you would have these little socials, these mixers, as we call them, where you did it with the soccer team or the volleyball team. They would come to your game and the kids would go to their games. And it was just a great way to show that crazy coach that actually could have fun with these kids. And you can do it at every level. You can do it at the junior high, the high school, the college level, where you just put everybody's name in a hat. And like this year, for some reason, the worst sport that was ever invented is pickleball. Pickleball. Why? I don't get it. But everybody is just so enamored with frickin' pickleball, right? So I go and I play with my headmaster, Than Healy, and his wife, and we play with the science teacher. And then I got the two, tennis coaches that are just like smacking the damn pickleball on my chest. And so once again, I thought, well, this is a great thing to share when we do our mixers. And I think if you're a coach like me that's a little intense and you want kids to get in the weight room and get better, and hey, when are we going to get some extra shots up? Having these little mixers, and you can do it with like the lacrosse, the boys lacrosse team and the guys basketball team. I've always found that something outside of what you do every day that can share a fun event, but it's a little bit competitive, always goes a long way to realize that Coach Larsen does have a heart and maybe a little bit of soul. I'm sending it back to you, Climo.
Well, I appreciate that. And I love all those ideas, and hopefully our audience can grab a few of those. And I know there are basketball coaches listening in, trying to glean some basketball specific information, even though for the most part, all of you have touched on how, basketball is secondary to the relationship piece. So I'm going to throw a doozy at you and give you a beat to think about it. And then whoever feels inspired to answer this one can jump right in, and then we'll go in our normal rotation. But here's the question. What is something that you believe that people in your industry, in this case, other basketball coaches, would disagree with? Meaning, there's generally a way to do certain things, and 80% of the population of basketball coaches subscribe to this. But then there's you, and you are completely out of sorts over in regards to how people are going to reflect on that. And an example from me to maybe grease the wheels here would be scouting. I just don't do it. I'm not going to spend time doing it. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference in the big picture of my season. I'm going to watch a little film here and there, get some key personnel things, but I got better things to do with my time. Is probably not in line with the majority of people in our business. So I throw that out there, and I'm curious from your standpoint, what is something you believe as a coach and all of your experience that, Coach Larsen and Coach Hanmer have more than the rest of us probably combined, but that the rest of our industry would probably disagree with?
Well, as a senior spokesman here, I'll go first. So I love scouting. I love going to a ball game and watching the two opponents that I'm going to face in the next week watch me walk in the gym. Whether I know 90% of what they're going to do, and I'll sit there in the middle and jot down notes. So, but that's kind of where I learned how to coach, is that you did live scouting. There were no film. Now with Huddle, the one thing I will say that one of the coaches had brought up about when you have those type of streams is you can tell when your kids are watching film or not. So you go to a film study and you know that Joey has done 2 minutes and Bobby has done 45 minutes. So I think the live scouting, just to kind of see some, bench decorum and whatnot. The other thing is I come from a guy that played with Dick Harder at Oregon. I played against Bud Presley when I came back and played at Skyline College when Lyle Newcomer played zone. I played at San Francisco State where we did a lot of different things. And I think a lot of coaches my age are, this is what you do. And I think if anybody really loves 1-3-1 and can attack it, I love changing defenses out of timeout. And they look at me and said, oh, that's, gimmick or whatnot. But I tell you what, if you can take 5 or 10 minutes out of each of your opponent's practices, because you do run a little 1-3-1, you do run a little, 2-3 or 1-2-2 trap. You do run and jump every once in a while. And that's not your base defense, but you show it every once in a while. And now people have to prepare. And then on the offensive side, coming from a system that we ran lots of sets. And once again, taking practice time, I think, is something that most people that run, the Princeton stuff or motion stuff or the flex stuff, being a guy that runs a lot of different sets. And I played Pacific Grove in the CCS semifinals. They weren't great. Matter of fact, they were horrible. I'm not saying horrible, talent-wise. But I'm telling you, that guy can run some sets and he changes defenses. And we weren't very good at all. We probably beat him by 10. And I walked over to him and I just shook his hand. I said, listen, I just really love the way you coach your team. You're up on every possession. You change defenses. You run different presses. He just didn't have the personnel. But I just love coaches that aren't just stuck in their ways. And I think most of the teams that I scout, I pretty much know 90% of the things they're going to try to do. And I think I'm looked upon maybe a little differently in that I don't have a set system that is what we do all the time. And I'm okay with that.
I think I'll jump in on this if you don't mind. First off, it was interesting you asked the question. I was listening to Malcolm Gladwell podcast, and he was talking about being disagreeable, and so it's interesting segue. Anyhow, I think one of the things that I immediately thought when you asked the question, something that we believe maybe that others don't, vice versa. A lot of coaches will talk about the fouling and foul games, and really good teams don't foul. And we foul a lot traditionally. We almost try to foul a lot. And I've always felt there's been games obviously that we've lost at the free throw line where we put the guys on the line too much. But generally speaking, we've tried to create a sloppy game. We've tried to create a physical game. And whether that's with ball pressure or chugging cutters and blitzing ball screens. I mean, we blockouts, we try to turn everything into a physical contest, and we foul a lot. And and some of my mentors that would watch my games your team fouls too much. And you're right. So I think that answers your question pretty specifically. That's something I know that most coaches would say. You're not supposed to foul. And we don't encourage fouling per se, but we definitely encourage contact. How about that?
Before the next person jumps in, I'll tell you this. We used to talk about that when we were together as the Elk Grove philosophy under Coach Goldman and Ricewig, where you just foul so much the refs stopped calling it.
I don't think I have a great answer to your question, Coach, but something came up that I'm just going to share. So Coach Larsen was talking about scouting and film and whatnot. And this is just a nugget that I've started using over the years, that is making sure that when we film, I film from the opposite side of our bench, and I'm looking at our bench as well as the game during film, and very intentional about that, and pointing out stuff that's going on or not going on the bench during games. And I just think it's, especially for the guys that don't get a ton of opportunity to play, that what they do still matters to the team. Just being able to have that on film and go to that, I think has been a helpful tool in the tool belt throughout the years. So not an answer to your question, I'm sorry. So maybe that's what I do. I break the rules. I just, I go this way when you ask me to go that way. I'm sorry.
Hey, if you don't mind, Coach Harris, I'm going to jump on that. We had a one time when I was at the junior college, we put a second camera on the and it only looked at the bench. And we got close enough that we could see facial expressions, we could read lips, and we had a film session, and all we watched was the bench decorum. And then we related that to the things that I think that you're referring to. So I love that.
One thing I'll try to add to the conversation. It's a great question. I'm just racking my brain and really, investigating what I may do or not do. But I'll tell you one thing. It's a little bit of an angle from this question. Was there's something that I'm going to do or no longer do that I know a lot of us do, and I'm not, judging or criticizing those that do, because, but one thing I know I'm not going to be doing going forward is post-game talks. And I'm sure that's not revolutionary anymore, but I've just given that a lot of thought. I really tried to do that during the COVID year, and I found myself still doing that. And so I needed, like every change takes time, and it takes feedback, and it takes practice. And so I don't think I did a very good job of that during the COVID year, because I'd catch myself doing it again. And then I got, darn it, so going forward, I'm really pledging to not do anything that involves, much feedback, unless there's an immediate thing that needs to be addressed that cannot wait until the next morning, because I find myself often too emotional or too exhausted, or I'm trying to find reasons for what we did or didn't do. And it's just not good feedback. The players aren't in a time to really hear it, to digest it. And parents want to go home and they don't want to wait for their kid. My wife wants me home. I mean, just, there's, the list is on. My AD wants me out of the gym. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And then how often do we watch film and we realize, man, we actually played pretty well. Like we did what we wanted to do. And you end up then like feeling like you'll come in the next day with a different message. And that's just not right for our players. So I'm going to try to be consistent about having little to no post-game talk in the locker room, or outside or behind the bench because of the COVID year, and just save some time so my feedback can be better, more appropriate, and less winded, and hopefully better received. So, Coach Hanmer, do you have something?
Definitely. All great answers. Coach Wilson, the first 6 years, opponents shot 63% from the foul line against Rancho Mirage. So we like to foul, and we like to practice boxing out free throws, because if you can't box out and get the rebound on the miss, it's going to actually end up costing you points. So, and then we used to, with the two people on one side and one on the other, we used to run all kinds of plays to get the rebound when we missed free throws. And we scored hundreds of points doing that. Now with the two single guys, it's a little bit harder, but we still practice spins and crosses, trying to get free throws that might come off. Probably the most bizarre thing I could think of is it's August 2nd, and I honestly don't know what our base defense is going to be for this group. Haven't decided what my kids can do or can't do. Obviously, we're doing basic man shell drill kind of stuff right now. Sometimes I think we can do it, and other times I'm like, holy cow, we suck. So we're still trying to decide what pieces are going to be on the floor and what our best chance of being successful defensively is. Obviously, our goal at our school is to score 80 points a game. So we're trying to get you to shoot the ball as quickly as possible and have the wrong kid shoot for you. So if I can sucker you into having your third best player take the shots instead of your best two guys, then we might try and figure out a defense that causes that to happen. Coach Clamo's still pissed at me for guarding his really good kid really well. So I mean it's bizarre and it's hard sitting here going, damn, I don't even know. I think we're gonna play full court, but you know we still got about 6 weeks before we make some choices. So when the kids determine the pecking order for playing time, we'll create a defense that allows that group to be successful on that end. So that's a little bit different than most people.
Another thing that I'm not sure if you picked up on that's different for Coach Hanmer there is it's August 2nd, and he said in 6 weeks they're going to know what they're doing, where the rest of us are going to start in November, Coach.
Hey, can I just say one thing about Coach Manfredi? We had no locker room, you know, so when the game was over, it was over. So you didn't have your post-game talk. So being a huge Ted Lasso fan, every time we lost, I said, remember, we're butterflies. We have no memory. And then when we won, I said, now remember how we got this done and let's carry it on to the next game. Those were my post-game talks. So I really appreciate that, Coach. And hopefully I'll continue it even when we have a locker room.
Coach, we had an outside area in between our small gym and our weight room that they afforded us the opportunity to have post-game conversations. And I think I saw some of those butterflies flying around. I just wasn't smart enough to connect it to, you know, the greatest coach, Ted Lasso, who, you know, is making us all laugh once a week.
So I'm going to wrap with this since we are beyond the hour mark at this point. We could probably do this for another couple hours, but I had this observation and realization about 3 weeks ago watching water polo camp outside my window. And those of you that have been to my place and know the office just stares out at the pool. And I'm watching water polo camp and the coaches are on the deck giving instructions, teaching, etc. And it made me realize what and how would you approach your task in our job if you could not physically demonstrate what you wanted to be done? Because that's the role that these guys have to play as they're coaching. They can't jump in the pool and demonstrate. It's almost like you have to be an elite communicator. So I'm going to restrict you to 30-second soundbite or none. Maybe it's just something you take with you that I had this observation and I'm kind of handing it off, but I'm curious your thoughts on that. And if that's ever come up for you, and if there's anything in that space that you've had to wrestle with from that standpoint where, you know, you can't demonstrate. So how do you teach? And we'll start with Eddie and we'll go around and then we'll wrap this thing up. Keep it brief and on point, please.
Just very quickly, I'm thinking, you know, players coaching other players. So again, I'm not demonstrating, but you know, player X is, because, you know, he's really good at it, or he's been in the system and he knows. And you know, having really good lower level coaches that teach the fundamentals, and then being able to just kind of you know, bring back those things and have guys, you know, senior level guys that can set the examples.
Coach, I tore my Achilles in 2017, so couldn't show much of anything. And since then, I started utilizing just cut-ups even more of film, and not just of us, but like, let's go see how an elite player does this. And this is what I'm asking you to do. And I like to send those to guys just like after practice, before practice. Hey, this is what I'm asking you to work on today. So they can see it from somebody else that they admire. Coach Larsen, what you got?
I just probably started doing this maybe 10 years ago, and you run a closeout drill where you have four offensive players and a kid underneath the basket, and the coach throws the ball to one of the four guys, and they kind of get out there. And then you ask one of the guys, show me what 100% looks like. And the kid just sprints out there and sprints out there. And I said, okay, that's what you think 100% looks like. Why can't we do that every time? And just having one of your teammates show you what they think 100% looks like goes a long way, rather than you show them or one of the other assistants show them. So that's worked pretty well for me in all kinds of drills.
I totally agree on having their peers teach players. That goes a long way. And then obviously love sending video clips of kids that need extra attention on what it looks like. We just got a transfer, and a kid couldn't shoot at all. I mean, it was like a knuckleball. So there's lots of shooting videos that have gone his way in the last couple months, showing him what it's supposed to look like.
I think quickly how I try to address that is I try to first watch or learn or speak to someone who knows how to do it correctly, so I can explain it. And then I try to find someone that can then show it if I can't do it, whether that's a player, whether it's an assistant coach. And then we do it. And when we do it, I also try to connect maybe an action that they know how to do already, so we can build upon something we know and get to that next move or that next action. And then from there, I try to give feedback as quick as I can verbally, but ultimately swing back to video where we can watch it and have those conversations and give feedback. And then tell my kids, like, we're in this together. Like, this is something we're trying to accomplish, and to let them know that it's something that's not easy and it's going to take time to get better at.
Love it. Appreciate all those thoughts. Sometimes I always wondering when I think about something, what other people have to offer. And it's funny because Terrence tore your Achilles. I had 2 surgeries 1 year and was on crutches for 6 months and had to figure that out. And didn't even realize it till you just mentioned that. So thanks for bringing it back to that. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Appreciate the time you took out of your evenings and your families tonight, and looking forward to getting this up in the lineup as soon as possible.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you guys.
You are on mute still, as usual.
I'm constantly on mute. Coach Climo, please share my information to all the coaches that have a golf starting time over the next month. I'm free anytime. And I know a lot of you live on very nice areas. I can bring you out to Stanford Golf Course anytime you want. So let's stay in touch. I really enjoyed this.
Hold on. That sounds like an offer.
9 a.m. tomorrow, buddy.